Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be doing a mid-year check-in, and so this video is going to contain some stats from the first half of the year. It is also going to have my top 10 so far. It's also going to have some questions from the all-famous mid-year book freakout tag, only some of the questions, not all of them. And then at the very end, I'm also going to have like a little section for some channel updates and things that might be changing, some ideas that I have going forward for the next part of the year. So let's go ahead and, like I said, start with some of those stats. So my goal for this year was to read 45 books, but more importantly than the books was actually the word count or the page count, and I had set that at around 20,000 pages. And so on the book front, I am currently at 29 books, which is 64% of that goal, so a little bit ahead there. But like I said, the more important thing I think is the page count, because lengths of books, you know, that can kind of mess you up, and it's not always the same. If I'm reading a lot of shorter stuff, the book count will be higher, but the pages, I mean, you understand what I mean. And so on the page front, I'm at 10,554, which is 52%. So just a little bit ahead of schedule there, which is nice. It's about exactly where I want to be at this point in the year. My average ranking has gone up since my quarter one check-in. So at my quarter one check-in, it was at a 3.27, and now we are up to a 3.64, which is a pretty good improvement. I have read at this point 2 4-stars, 3 8-stars, 12 4-stars, and now 2 5-stars. So a pretty good mix. The biggest bump is definitely in the 3 and 4-star range. I went from only having 3 3-stars to 8 and 4 4-stars to 12. So that is definitely where a lot of that steam picked up and why the ranking has continued to rise. And another goal that I had was to read one nonfiction book this year. I actually did that in quarter one, and I actually have read another one for quarter two, and that is this little philosophy book here, Lessons in Stoicism and What Ancient Philosophers Can Teach Us by John Sellers. And this was just an interesting little book. I have always been interested in like religion and philosophy, and it's not something I've really touched since getting out of college. And so this was just kind of like a really quick, I mean, you can see, I think it's like 50-ish pages, just learning some basic stuff about Stoicism, because it's a philosophy that I feel like a lot of people kind of use in a way that it's not really meant to be. It has a lot of misunderstanding about it. I saw some really interesting discussions and watched some really interesting videos on it that kind of pointed me to reading some of this stuff for myself and diving into it a little bit deeper. And it was fun. I had a good time, so I'm glad that I could continue on my nonfiction journey as well as my fiction journey. And now probably for the most exciting part of this video, it is my top 10 of the year so far. And in 10th place, we have Salem's Lot by Stephen King. I gave that book a 4-star rating. It is actually my least favorite Stephen King book that I have read so far, but once again, he's still a great author, still a great book, and this is a book that I have said I normally don't feel this way, but I think this is a book where knowing the spoilers or getting it spoiled quite early on and just knowing a lot of things about the book hurt my enjoyment of reading it. I think if I had gone into this blind and just got to enjoy this very creepy town and setting and everything going on, that I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. In the 9th spot, we have Return to Adan by fellow booktuber Philip Chase. I actually just recently did a discussion on this. I'm not sure when that video will be out, but when it is, I will let everybody know. I had a great time. It was with John from Talking Story, Joanna, Murphy Napier, and Philip Chase himself. So we had a great time talking about this, mostly just this book. I think we got a little bit into the trilogy as a whole, but this was a really fun book. Great ending to the trilogy. I really enjoyed it, especially for me, a series that I wasn't in love with in the first book. I liked it. I thought it was good, but each book just got better and better, and this was just a great ending. It explored a lot of things that let Philip show what the modern fantasy genre can do. It really spread its wings and explored things that I hadn't seen in a lot of other books, and I highly recommend that you read the trilogy now that it is all out. In the 8th spot, we had A Time of Changes by Robert Silverberg. These are all 4 stars. I'll let you know when I get to a 5-star book. And A Time of Changes is a 1970, maybe 71 sci-fi book, and the big idea that is involved in this story is the idea of self. This is a book that I'm not sure a lot of other people will like. It's one that I have a hard time recommending to people. One, it's older, it gets a little far out there with some of the ideas and everything. It's written in what I find a pretty fascinating way, but others maybe not so much. But this is a book that I really enjoyed, made me want to read more Silverberg, and it's something I'm definitely going to do moving forward at some point. But once again, A Time of Changes was a great read. In the 7th spot, we have another Stephen King entry, and that is Cujo. When I first read Cujo, I I wasn't sure how another Stephen King book could be better than this, and I was wrong, because there are 2 more on this list, and King has just been a revelation for me this year. I think most people know the idea of Cujo, the dog that has some things go wrong. Great story, definitely didn't pull its punches. The ending of this book blew me away. I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't have spoilers for this one, thankfully, and yeah, great book. If you haven't read it, I think this is an okay spot to start with Stephen King. I had a really good time with it. In the 6th spot, we have The War Host of Vastmark by Jenny Wirth. Now, I read this very early. I think this was a January read, so this is one of those books that has stuck around here for a little bit of reading, and that is book 3 in her magnum opus, Wars of Light and Shadow. And once again, another great book. Getting into the trilogy, I can't say, and not into the trilogy, this is the 3rd book, but getting into this series, you know, this series asks a lot of its reader, and I definitely think it's worth it. Each book has just gotten better and better. I've enjoyed each book more and more. And once again, Jenny Wirth's writing is just on another playing field, another plane of existence. I've never experienced writing like hers. It is something else. I am very much attached to the characters at this point, and there are just heartbreaking scenes in this book that just make me feel, and yeah, there's just so much that the series has to offer, and I think it is starting to pick up a little bit of steam here on BookTube, and I hope that it is a series that if you have not, you will consider at least looking into it. It is definitely kind of one of those series, like I said, that asks a lot from its reader. It's not a popcorn read. You're not going to sit down and blow through it, but it is a very enriching series, and I get a lot out of reading those books. So in the 4th and 5th spot, I'm going to go ahead and combine these 2, because it is Empire of the Vampire in the 5th spot and the sequel Empire of the Damned in the 4th spot. Both of those are by Jay Kristoff. I read both of them this year, and this is just an awesome, hardcore, like dark, gritty vampire fantasy series. I am very excited about the next book. I hope we don't have to wait too long. I think it might be a year or 2 until the last book in this trilogy comes out, but this story just has one of my favorite new characters, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But once again, awesome, very gritty. I think if you read Empire of the Vampire within like 100 pages or less, probably like 75 pages. There's a couple things in that book that happen that you will know if this is going to be a series you're going to be interested in reading or not. Some of the elements that I really enjoyed are, there's a heavy emphasis on religion in this book, and a lot of it is taken from Christianity and kind of twisted to fit this world, and that is one of the things that I have absolutely adored about that series. Also just how gritty, and I don't read a lot of books that are like that level of gritty and dark, and I don't know, there's just like this edge to it that it's on the borderline of like being edgy with not being like overly cringy edgy, if that makes sense to you. And so I have thoroughly enjoyed those books so far. And in the 3rd spot is Misery by Stephen King. I read this right after Cujo, and so I had the high of Cujo, thought no way another book is going to beat out that, and then here comes Misery. And obviously this is a very dark book with a dark story, but there's just something about that book. It's a 2-character book really, and their interactions and just some of the horrific things that happen. There's a spirit of perseverance that happens in the story that I found to be kind of inspiring, even though it's, you know, maybe portrayed in such an awful circumstance and everything. I think Annie Wilkes is one of the best characters I've ever read as well. She is just a force. She's not even like a person, the way she's kind of described in this book. She's almost like an otherworldly force that comes in and just, you know, causes all kinds of mayhem. And it's quite entertaining to see this spiral downward, and things get worse and worse and worse and worse, and you just don't know how they could get worse, and yet somehow they do over and over and over again. And now we are on to the 5-star reads, and like I said, there are only 2 of them. In 2nd place so far this year for me is All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. Once again, 5-star rating. This is just a book that kind of touched my soul a little bit. It is a Western, but more of a modern Western. I think I forget exactly the time period it's happening in, but it's enough where like airplanes and cars are a normal thing, but it still has like that spirit of being in an older time. And there's just something so beautiful and well done in that story, and it has some of those McCarthyisms that just I enjoy from him, and not the ones that I don't, because he is such a polarizing author for me. One of my favorite books of all time in All the Pretty Horses here, and he has written 2 of my least favorite books of all time. So I have run the gambit with Cormac McCarthy, and All the Pretty Horses is just a book that I still think about. I don't think about writing it being beautiful very often. There are very few authors that do that for me, and McCarthy was just able to transport me to this world and be there with the characters, and just a way that not many authors can. So that's what made this book so special for me. It does also play to my sense of exploration and adventure, and that's another thing that I think made me really gravitate towards this book. And once again, it is just a beautiful book. I'm not sure this is going to be one that everybody likes, but for me, it was absolutely fantastic, and I loved this book. And now let's get to my #1 book for the year. I think this is going to be a very difficult book for anything to beat out, and that is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Once again, Stephen King making up a huge chunk of this list. I didn't even plan on reading that much King, but I'm kind of addicted to him now. He's kind of turning into my Sanderson from last year, where like 30-something of my books I read were from Sanderson last year, catching up on the Cosmere. But Pet Sematary is just an exploration of grief, of family, of trauma, of life, death, just so many things. And you know, I have said this multiple times now at this point, but Pet Sematary is a book that I don't know if I could read it if I was a parent. Like there are scenes in this book that are just so surreal and heartbreaking, and yeah, it's just a special book. It doesn't necessarily cover the most glorifying like subjects, or it's not like this grand adventure or anything, but it is just a real book, and it's something special. And once again, Stephen King, I don't know if a book will top this from him for me. This is such a special book, and once again, just a fantastic entry. So glad that I ended up reading that this year, and so that is my top 10. I would like to hear your top 10 of the year so far down below in the comments. And now let's go ahead and transition into some of the questions from the mid-year book freakout tag. I cut some of them out because some of them got answered from my top 10 and other things. So let's go ahead and jump into those questions. The first question is, what is your biggest disappointment? And I think for me this year so far, it has been Blind Sight by Peter Watts. This book was kind of sold to me as a riveting first contact story, and you know, that's not what I got out of the story. I think this story ends up asking a lot of different kinds of questions, and just questions that I wasn't interested in exploring. And I think that's one of those things with science fiction books, where if a question is proposed to you, or we're going along some kind of scientific idea, if it's not an idea that you are interested in or care about, it's going to be extremely hard for you to enjoy the book. And that is just the case that happened here with Peter Watts' Blind Sight. There's some very strange things about this book from the crew and from how they handle certain things, but in general, this is just not a book that worked for me. I really wanted to like it. This is one that is spoken so highly of. Like, I think I'm very much in the minority for not enjoying Blind Sight by Peter Watts, but it just is what it is, unfortunately. The next question is, what is the biggest surprise of the year for me? I think it's actually going to be a tie for my 2 5 stars. It's Pet Sematary and All the Pretty Horses. Maybe All the Pretty Horses even more than this book, because All the Pretty Horses was kind of my last-ditch effort at reading McCarthy, because my last couple reads from him after The Road had not been all that great. I hadn't had the most positive experience with him. So I'm gonna give it to All the Pretty Horses just a little bit over this book as well. But same thing with Pet Sematary. I didn't expect to fall in love with this book the way that it did. I have had a much more positive experience with King compared to McCarthy, so maybe this one isn't as big of a surprise, but still a surprise that this one is as high up as it is, that I liked it even more than All the Pretty Horses and everything like that. So yeah, 2 for 1 right there. And the next question is my favorite, or new favorite author to me, or a debut, and it has to be Stephen King. Actually, does that count? Because I read Stephen King in 2022 with it, but I'm gonna go ahead and cheat because this feels like a different kind of revelation. When I read it, I just didn't even treat it like a Stephen King book. I read it as just kind of a one-off thing. And really diving into King this year, I'm gonna go ahead and say that he is, even though technically I've read him before, because I have not really experienced anything like I have with this small journey I've been on with King. It's not even that many books, so especially when you compare it to everything he's written, but it has just been something really special so far with King. And the next question is my newest favorite character, and I'm gonna have to go with Gabriel de Leon from Empire of the Vampire, Empire of the Damned. He is not a character that I would normally be this drawn to, but there's just something about him and his, and it might just be the world that he's in that makes him acceptable. He almost kind of gives me a little bit of Witcher vibes, like Geralt from the Witcher series vibes, a little bit, definitely much darker and everything, but there's just that kind of, he's our reluctant, not even reluctant, he's the hero we're following, and no matter what he does, how bad it is, we're still following along and going on the journey with him, and you know, that is what it is. And I have enjoyed getting to experience you know, everything with him. He's been great, and he's been a highlight of that series for me. The next question is a book that made you cry, and technically this year I don't think I've had a book that actually made me like cry. It's been a while since that happened, but I did get pretty misty-eyed with Return to the Edan at the end. There's a couple scenes in here that are just really powerful, you know, big, you know, climactic ending stuff that only gets really pulled off when a series is coming to an end. So there are definitely some things here in this book that definitely got me a little misty-eyed as I made my way through it. The next question is, what is the most beautiful book you have bought or received this year? And for me, that is going to be Neon Ghost by Daniel Green. This edition is just really beautiful. I really like the cover, the colors on it and everything. I actually really like the pink on the edges, and I just think the scheme and the colors and everything just go together super well. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to this book. I haven't even read it yet. I plan on doing that hopefully in July, but I have loved this cover since I first saw it. I know technically this came out last year. You could get it in certain formats, but now that this special edition hardcover is here, this is one of my favorite books that I have now, just based on the colors and the cover and everything on it. And the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And there are so many. I would definitely like to continue pushing into my Malazan journey. Memories of Ice is going pretty well for me, so I'm pretty confident that I'll at least want to read 2 or 3 more books there. Janny Wirtz series as well, I'd like to continue there. I'm at the end of an arc, so I'm kind of in a good paused spot, but I would like to, continue there. I think Fugitive Prince is the next one I'm on. That sounds right, but maybe not. Also, there's still a couple series I want to get into. Sun Eater is one of them. Malice by John Gwynne, or I can't remember what that series is called off the top of my head, but that is the first book in that series, and many, many more. I'm going to be doing a video on new releases that are coming soon that I want to read when they come out, so be on the lookout for that. And the last topic of this video, I think, is going to be some possible changes that I have been flirting with here on the channel. One thing I have been thinking of is going away from just reviews to more of a review vlog kind of style. And my reasoning and thought behind this is all of the books that I read, my goal was to always do a review for all of those books. And as I've read more and more, I have realized that there are just some books that and it's not even that I think they're bad, there are some books that I think are very good that I enjoy that I just don't have that much to say about, and I don't think a review is the best way to talk about that book. So I still want to continue to talk about every book that I read, and so I thought that maybe a good way to kind of balance that with a mixture of reviews and vlogs and everything. I don't want to completely stop doing reviews. I still really like doing it, especially when there are books that really speak to me and I want to talk about, and so I thought about maybe adding in some reading vlogs. I don't think they would be like lifestyle ones. It would just be more of, over the course of a week or two, what I've been reading and what my thoughts are as I've made my way through them, from, maybe a beginning 25%, 50%, finishing the book, maybe something like that, some kind of breakdown. Some of that would probably depend on how long the books are, but that is just an idea that I have been flirting with. And then the rest of my content would kind of be these things you've come to expect, whether they be top 10 list, just random ideas I have, books I'm planning on reading, TBRs, wrap-ups, tags, all of those other book content ideas that people do and that I enjoy doing. One thing that I always wanted to do on the channel is make videos that I also like watching. And so for the longest time, reviews were my favorite videos to watch here on BookTube. I got away from all of the lists and everything, and I really, really enjoyed reviews. And so I would go out and try to find reviews and just watch reviews, because I wanted to just either hear what people thought about books that I had read or what people thought about books that I wanted to read. So I would even watch reviews a little bit right before I read a book, so that I could maybe get an idea of what people were thinking as I went into a book. And while I still do enjoy reviews, I have realized that maybe that's not the most fulfilling video for me to make anymore, and I'm trying to still find that balance. So that is my one and really only change that I'm thinking of doing here. Some of that we'll see. I am doing a vlog for Memories of Ice, and so that is kind of me testing the waters there a little bit with, do I like filming that way? Do I think I know what I'm even doing enough to make a vlog that people are going to want to watch? Does it just turn into me rambling for way too long, kind of like this video is? And there are all kinds of variables there on that front. But that is my mid-year check-in. So that's my top 10, some stats, the mid-year book freakout tag. I can never say that one right. And then some channel changes. So let me know anything you want to below down in the comments, whether you like the idea of the vlog instead of just reviews. Like I said, I won't stop reviews completely, but that's just an idea I've had. Let me know your top 10, any stats that you have, all of that fun stuff down below in the comments. And that's all for me. So as always, have a good one.